Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to do a bit of a different custom Hearthstone card video. Basically, I wanted to take a look at the Lackeys. So the Lackeys are really cool. We haven't had too many new additions. We had the new addition of the Taunt Lackey, and honestly, that Lackey was kind of lacking. I think the other Lackeys are actually more interesting, and I didn't really know where to start. I thought maybe I'd come up with some of my own Lackeys, but why don't I first look at what other people have come up with Lackeys? And I found something like one dude posted like 4 Lackeys on his own webpage. That was alright. Those are pretty cool Lackeys. Featured some of the mechanics in the one you're about to see. But I didn't really see much else other than Hearthcards.net has its own like gallery. So I checked that out to see if I could find people who have submitted actual Lackey cards to the custom Hearthstone card library. And they have. There's actually quite a number of them, and I thought the ideas are actually great. So they're great enough that maybe we'll end up seeing some of these, and it's something worth talking about right now because, well, we're going to get that, the mid-content expansion thingy at some point, I imagine. We had, the mechanized thingy of, Rise of Shadows. I don't know what we're going to get this time around. Maybe we're going to get some more Lackeys. Maybe not. I imagine we're going to get at least another 1 or 2. So what would they look like? Perhaps they'd look like one of these. So what do we got? Neferset Lackey. 1 cost, 1/1, battle cry, refresh your hero power, its next use costs 0. So that's pretty cool. The genius behind Lackeys is they have to be pretty simplistic. They gotta be 1 mana 1/1s, and they have to have an effect that kind of makes it worthwhile as like a 2 mana card. That's what Lackeys are. They're pretty good 2 mana cards. Typically a little bit better than the average 2 mana card because you're getting a random one, often not one that you specifically desire. So Neferset Lackey comes in a little bit weak on the power level side, but I think it's very cool and there are some build arounds through it, so I think it's just fine. Dwarf Lackey, 1 cost, 1/1. They're all 1 cost, 1/1s. They're Lackeys. This one, Battlecry, give your weapon +1/+1, and if you don't have one, you discover a weapon. So it does either effect, and I think it's still pretty balanced at that. If you have a weapon already, you get another attack worth of it. That's okay. I think typically you'd want to play this in order to discover a weapon rather than buffing it, but sometimes buffing it is very valuable, so that's not universally true. Discovering a weapon is not that much different than discovering a spell, but it can be pretty interesting. I think it can be pretty interesting because you have to keep in mind the discover options for like spells and stuff, it gives you only options for your class. So if you have discover a weapon, you're playing warrior, you're only going to see warrior weapons, which means the card's not really that good. But if you're playing a class without weapons, it's actually very interesting because that's when the class restriction totally breaks down. If you're playing like Priest, for example, priests don't have any weapons, you're actually going to get weapons from all the different classes, and it makes getting this Lackey, particularly in Priest, for example, actually really amazing. So that's what's really cool about it. Banshee Lackey. Silence stuff. I think silence is a pretty interesting mechanic in Hearthstone, but I actually don't like the consistency of it. So if you're playing an aggro deck, you just play some silences to just smork it through all the time, right? Yeah, that's kind of lame, I think. Or like your first 2 taunt minions against an aggro deck are just worthless. And the play around is to just play them anyway and hope you don't die, right? That's kind of dumb. I think random silence effects are perhaps a solution to this, where if you have especially a larger pool of Lackeys, getting a silence effect randomly might not encourage you to run silence in your deck, and it gives you more of like a refreshing experience. Some games you'll have silence, and other games you'll have to make use of the other Lackeys. It's a 1 cost, essentially. Would you pay 2 mana for a 1/1 silence something? You would. People played Owl, and people played Owl when it cost 2 mana and was a 2/1 in droves. It was huge in Hearthstone to a point where they had to nerf it to 3 mana. So it's perfectly balanced. I think we need silence in the game, and I think getting it through a random mechanic, particularly the Lackey mechanic, is actually very fitting. Medium Lackey. This is the psychic oracle type of thing. That's the thematics behind it. Reveal a card in your deck, and then you draw it. Well, it seems simple enough. Now, it's going to be like a 2 cost 1/1, but it's a little bit worse than like Novice because your opponent gets to see it. But, you know, in constructed, does that really matter? It only just tells your opponent that you have the card at any given time, but actually it allows you to kind of bluff some synergies that you might otherwise have. So I kind of like the play around of this. I like the idea of cards being revealed, not in many ways, but just in some ways to tease your opponent into what you might have, and knowing that, and both players know that that card exists in one player's hand, well, it makes it a very interesting mind game situation. So I love it. Intimidating Lackey. Next minion you play this turn costs 2 less. So very simple, but you have to keep in mind that getting this card, it's kind of like a 1-mana ramp. A lot of the lackeys, you play them proactively. You just get a random lackey, and because generating the lackey typically costs like an extra mana, you typically have to play your lackeys very soon. With Intimidating Lackey, if you're not able to do that, you're losing tempo early in what's typically a tempo deck. Most lackey decks are tempo decks. So it might look like it's a lot stronger than the other ones because, you know, talking about lackeys, we said that lackeys typically need to be the equivalent of 2-mana cards. Well, this one costs 1, so it's really barely better than an Innervate, and you'll have to get a little bit lucky with the mana arrangements in order to play it right away. So actually, instead of it being a bit overly powerful as a lackey, I think it's actually a little bit under, but who knows? So I guess it's probably just right. Chaotic Lackey. So this one is when you play him, you cast a random spell that costs 3 or less. It's not you generate the random spell. So that's where you get the value. It's not discovering a spell. You don't get to discover. It's just something random. And it could be up to 3 mana. So you get very good value if it's the right spell, but you might not get the right spell. So it's a random lackey into a random spell. What could go wrong? It's Hearthstone after all, right? That's how the game works a lot of the time. Basically the Yogg Lackey. I think people like Yogg in moderation, and maybe this is a good compromise. Whirling Lackey, pretty straightforward. You play him, deals 1 damage to all other minions. It's basically like Whirlwind, except you get the 1 extra dude, which kind of makes it just about value at 2 mana. Well made. Shadow Lackey. When you play it, you return a friendly minion to your hand and it costs 2 less. It's kind of like a super panda. It's basically like a Shadow Step Lackey. Shadow Step's pretty valuable, particularly if it was a card playable by other classes other than Rogue. So Shadow Lackey is actually quite useful, quite interesting, and I'd love to get it randomly in most of the decks that I play. You have to keep in mind, it's not just, you know, getting those extra battle cry, those extra combo effects. It's just healing up a minion a lot of the time. It's, you know, taking a minion back, playing a board clear, and then playing it as, you know, high tempo because of the discount on a turn after. These kind of bounce effects are very flexible. A lot of time I'm playing Arena, I'm given the option to take one of the Brewmasters from Classic, and I end up taking it despite often it not being the best card offered because I know I can get more use out of it than the average player, and I think putting these mechanics into, you know, the day-to-day game state is gonna, you know, increase people's ability to understand these cards, and there's going to be better Hearthstone players at the end of the day. Tinker Lackey. Swap the attack and health of a minion. Yep. Straightforward. Pretty good effect. Certainly if this card was in the game, you can say bye-bye to Doomsayers, but they're not really all that popular right now, so I guess that's generally fine. Tinker Lackey is going to be pretty decent because a lot of the time, once again, if you're playing lackeys, you're playing a tempo deck, maybe an aggro deck, probably closer to a tempo deck, and in those situations, getting the flip effect is going to allow you to typically generate a lot of tempo. Typically, you don't always know how every one of those games are going to work out, but you know, if they play a low attack, high health taunt, going through it quickly is certainly a game-winning move that the Tinker Lackey can provide. Scarlet Lackey, last one we got. Battlecry, give a friendly character Divine Shield. Now, I don't really know why it's done this way, but I love it. You know what I would like? I would like a Divine Shield on my hero. That's right, a character is your hero as well. So why not? I want a Divine Shield on my hero. I want to defend myself against Priest Mind Blast combos in Wild if that ever is still a thing, right? That'd be pretty cool. It's not so much the Lackey itself. If you just gave a friendly minion Divine Shield, yeah, that'd probably be pretty good. But if you can give your face Divine Shield, what are the Smorkers going to do? They're going to be lost, right? So that's it, guys. What do you think? How many of these lackeys are we going to eventually get in the game? Are we going to get more lackeys? I think we'll get a few more lackeys by the time this year is over. I don't know what they're going to be like, and I think these, custom Hearthstone cards, I think they give you a pretty good idea about what we can expect from the Lackey and the mana and the, minion budgeting for those type of minions. So I think we'll probably see specifically, exactly in fact, some of these Lackeys when they're hopefully eventually released into the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys tomorrow.